Today, we're going to unravel a scientific puzzle that all started, well, it started with a high school student in a real hurry to make some ice cream. His simple observation in Tanzania would go on to baffle scientists and really challenge what we thought we knew about the laws of physics. It's a fantastic story about what happens when you trust your own eyes, even when all the experts are telling you you're wrong. Okay, so let's just get right to the heart of it. Can hot water actually freeze faster than cold water? I mean, on the surface, it just sounds impossible, right? It totally breaks the basic rule we all learn about how things cool down. But what if our intuition is wrong? All right, let's jump in a time machine and go back to 1963 to the Mpemba Secondary School in Tanzania. This is where we meet our main character, a young student named Erasto Mpemba. He had absolutely no idea that a simple afternoon activity was about to lead him to an observation that would puzzle physicists for the next 50 years. So at Mpemba's school, making ice cream was a huge deal. The process was pretty simple. You boil some milk, mix in some sugar. But here was the catch. There was only one refrigerator with very limited freezer space. So the rule was you had to wait for your boiled milk to cool all the way down before you could claim a spot. It was basically a race against time and, against all the other kids. Well, one afternoon, the freezer was almost totally full. Mpemba sees the last spot about to get snatched up, and he kind of panics. There's just no time to follow the rules and let his mixture cool down. So, in a moment of pure desperation, he pours the still boiling hot milk right into an ice tray and shoves it into the refrigerator. He just went for it. And this is where the story gets really interesting. About an hour and a half later, Mpemba comes back to check on his ice cream. And what he finds is just wild. His hot mixture, it was frozen solid, but the other boy's mixture, the one that had been properly cooled down first, was still just a thick, sloshy liquid. Without even trying, Mpemba had just discovered something that, well, it just shouldn't be possible. Making a discovery is one thing, but convincing anyone to actually believe you, that's a completely different battle. And this is where Mpemba's journey gets really tough. He had seen the impossible with his own two eyes, but the people in charge, they were not about to listen. So what do? You go to your physics teacher, right? He's all excited about what he's seen. He asks why his hot milk froze first. The teacher's response was just immediate and total dismissal. He told Mpemba he must have been confused, that what he saw simply couldn't have happened. End of story. Case closed. But Mpemba just couldn't let it go. You know that feeling. Later on, at a new school, his physics class was covering Newton's law of cooling. And this law basically says a hot object cools faster than a warm one, but it should never be able to catch up and overtake it. This was his chance. He stood up and he asked his question again. His new teacher wasn't any better. After a little back and forth, he just shut Mpemba down with this line, which was meant to be a joke for the rest of the class. And the name stuck. From then on, anytime Mpemba made a mistake in any subject, his classmates would mock him. They'd say, "Oh, that's Mpemba's mathematics." His scientific curiosity had literally turned him into the class joke. But this was not the end of the story, not by a long shot. Mpemba's persistence was about to pay off, all because of a chance meeting with a visiting scientist. And this scientist, unlike his teachers, was actually willing to listen. So Dr. Dennis Osborne, a physicist from a nearby university, comes to speak at the school. At the end of his talk, he opens up the floor for questions. And despite all the ridicule from his classmates, Mpemba stands up and, for the third time, he asks his question. If you take two similar containers with equal volumes of water, one at 35 Celsius and the other at 100 Celsius, and put them in a refrigerator, the one that started at 100 freezes first. Why? And you guessed it, the class just erupted in laughter. But Dr. Osborne didn't laugh. He admitted the idea sounded pretty strange, but he could see the student was serious. And instead of just dismissing him, he did something radical. He took him seriously. He looked at him and made a promise. And this, right here, was the turning point. It's the mark of a true scientist. When you're faced with something that doesn't make sense, you don't dismiss it, you test. And you know what? Dr. Osborne was true to his word. As soon as he was back at his university lab, he decided to put this strange schoolboy's question to the test, once and for all. So Dr. Osborne asks a junior lab technician to run the experiment. The technician places 2 beakers of water, one hot and one cold, into a freezer and just waits. And to his absolute astonishment, the results confirmed everything Mpemba had observed. The hot water really did freeze first.
But the technician's reaction to this is so fascinating. He goes back to Dr. Osborne and confirms the result. But then he says, but we'll keep on repeating the experiment until we get the right result. I mean, just think about that for a second. The evidence was literally right there in front of him. But it was so counterintuitive that his immediate thought was that his experiment had to be wrong, not the laws of physics he'd been taught his whole life. Well, repeated tests kept showing the exact same thing. In this graph, this is from the actual scientific paper they published together in 1969. This shows the proof. Look here. The horizontal axis, that's the starting temperature, and the vertical axis is how long it took to freeze. As the starting temperature goes up, the time to freeze actually goes down, at least to a certain point. It was undeniable. Mpemba had been right all along.
So, okay, we've established that it does happen. But that just leads to the next, much bigger question. Why? I mean, proving the effect was one thing. Explaining it is a whole other can of worms. Because it turns out there isn't one single, simple answer. Scientists have proposed a few different ideas, and they all might play a part. First up, there's evaporation. The hot water loses more mass as steam, so there's simply less water left to freeze. Makes sense. Then you have dissolved gases. Boiling drives out gases from the water, and this could change how it freezes. There's even an idea that the hot container melts the frost on the shelf, giving it better contact with the cold surface. But the leading theory, the one they focused on in the paper, it all comes down to something called convection currents. See, in the beaker of hot water, there's a huge temperature difference from the top to the bottom. This creates a kind of engine. Hot water from the bottom rises, cools off really fast at the surface, and then sinks again. This constant circulation acts like a powerful radiator, allowing the hot water to get rid of its heat way more efficiently than the calmer, cooler water. And so, the strange observation made by a ridiculed schoolboy in Tanzania was finally given a name. It is now officially known as the Mpemba Effect, a permanent part of the scientific lexicon. How cool is that? You know, this whole story is about so much more than just freezing water. The real takeaway here is about the nature of science itself and the incredible power of just asking a simple question. In their published paper, Dr. Osborne reflected on this whole experience, and he wrote that the story points to the danger of an authoritarian physics, this idea that science is just a big book of facts that you have to memorize. Mpemba's teachers, they were experts on the known rules, but they'd forgotten that the whole heart of science is about questioning those very rules. And that really is the heart of it all. Science isn't about having all the answers memorized. It's about having the courage to trust what you see, especially when it contradicts what you've been told, and to never, ever stop asking why. Erasto Mpemba wasn't confused. He was doing science. And so we'll leave you with this question to think about. Mpemba's entire incredible story started with one simple observation that defied common sense. It really makes you wonder, what have you seen in your own life that seemed impossible? What's the Mpemba effect that you've noticed, but that maybe everyone else just dismissed? And what might you discover if you had the courage to really question it?